Hi friends, welcome to our first video where we're going to learn about some of the elements of fiction. In front of you right now, you should have your elements of fiction notes. And I want you to be looking at the page that starts with plot. So make sure that you're looking at that page. That should be your first one. And we're going to start off with learning a little bit about plot, learning a bit about plot diagrams, and what goes into that. Before we get started, though, I wanted to let you guys know a few things. Looking at your notes, you guys will notice that there's not a lot of room for you guys to write. The boxes are quite small, and I made them that way for a reason. I don't want you to write down everything that I say. That would be a lot of writing for you guys and would probably end up being really boring, and you probably wouldn't learn a whole lot. Instead, what I want you to do is make small bullet point notes for you. These notes are not for me, they're for you, and you will use them as we go through our short story unit. So while you're taking these bullet point notes, you need to make sure that they make sense for you, not for your neighbor, not for your mom, not for me, but for you. The other thing that I want to remind you of is that this is a video. We're not learning in real time. So if I'm going too fast or I say something that you don't quite understand or didn't catch, feel free to pause or rewind this video while you guys get caught up and finish your thought on your notes. This is really important for you guys. And it's kind of nice that we're using a video so that you guys can go back and understand or pause and regroup yourself and be prepared to move on to the next section. While you're watching this video, if you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to come and ask. But for the most part, I will be able to answer all of your questions in this video. So let's get going. Your paper probably looks something like this, where it has plot, a small definition, and what we call a plot diagram. It has a couple of boxes. It looks a little bit like a mountain. A plot is the sequence of events that make up a story. Or in other words, it's everything that happens in a story that make up all the exciting parts. And there are 5 different parts of a plot. So you guys will see 5 different boxes on the top of this mountain structure. There's one little box on the bottom next to a star, and that's an extra element of plot that kind of helps our story out. And so we'll talk about why that one's so important. The first part of our plot or our plot diagram is what we call the exposition. The exposition is the beginning of our story. And this is where we, as readers or viewers of the story, learn about a few really important things. We might learn about the characters. We might learn about the setting, so where the story is taking place, what time the story is taking place. And we also might start to learn about some of the issues or problems our characters are facing. This is where the author really sets the story up and introduces our story. All of the important things that we need to know are done in the exposition. The second part of our story is called the rising action. And this is where things in our story start to get exciting. In the rising action, the main events start to occur, and they're the events that lead up to the most important part of our story. Our events start to get complicated. We start to see our characters making decisions, either good ones or bad ones. They start to involve other characters. Maybe they start to involve another place or another time. And so things really start to get complicated. The third part of our plot diagram or plot is called the climax. And the climax is the most important part of the story. That's why it's at the very top of our mountain, the very top of our plot diagram. And this is the turning point of our story. Up until now, the main character has been making decisions, going places, meeting new people, possibly. And now, in the climax, our character comes face to face with the major problem of the story. This is where the problem bursts wide open, and they are having to face the consequences of their actions, either good ones or bad ones. So, this is the turning point of our story. This is where things really change for our character and for anyone else involved. The fourth part of our story is called the falling action. Like I said before, the climax was the most important and most exciting part of our story. So, the falling action is when our main character either gets out of any trouble that was caused by their problems, or they start to settle any problems that occurred. Things start to really calm down in our falling action. We start to see solutions to our problems here. The last part of our plot diagram is called the resolution. And the resolution is the ending of our story. This is when all of the loose ends caused by the problems in our character are taken care of or they're solved. This is where our character reaches a final solution and we have the final outcome of our story. I like to think of our resolution as our happy ending, even though sometimes they're not so happy. But it's the end of our story, our resolution. Now we're going to go and look at this last box on our plot diagram with the orange star. And this is starred because it's not necessarily part of our plot, but it's an element that really helps our story. And so I decided to add this because I think it's important for you guys to know. And this is called our inciting incident. Our inciting incident is a fancy way of saying this is the first problem to get the story started. We might have seen in the exposition that our character has different problems that they are facing or different challenges that come up. And in the rising action, we got to see how they were facing those problems and how they were dealing with different things and what these problems meant for them. The inciting incident comes between the exposition and the rising action. And this is really our first problem, the first big thing to break our story open. It's not the most exciting thing. Remember, that's in our climax, number 3. But the inciting incident is one of the first things that we see our character face. The first problem to get the story started. So, in the coming weeks, we are going to work on filling out a plot diagram as we read different short stories. And so, you guys will want to keep these notes and make sure that you have these small definitions in your notes. That finishes up our first part of our notes for elements of fiction. Feel free to rewind and rewatch, or let me know if you have any questions after watching this.